you begin to notice that it's actually a very interesting topic that, even among the speakers, we have a lot of dialogue, but I like to open it to the floor. Please introduce yourself and then give a question and kind of point to which speaker you'd like to respond. The floor is open now. Anybody who want to make a question? Yes, the gentleman in yellow.
Hello everyone. My name is architect Dinesh Kumar and I am from Haryana. And I have a question from ma'am, architect Maitro, right ma'am? Ma'am, you are showing very beautiful facades for glasses where we can see that even nature is doing very good, like, all greenery is visible. So my question is, like when we are designing in India, ma'am, you're comfortable in English?
Can you finish your question?
Yes. Yeah. So my question is that, can you suggest me how we can reduce the use of glasses in facades?
How do you reduce the use of glass in facade? How do you avoid using too much glass?
Well, we use glass because we like open spaces that you can close it if you want, but you can open it and you can make the light enter. And glasses offer a lot of possibilities today, and also to have the day light without having all that lights open. So it participates of a sort of philosophy that you may not how I could say, it permits you much thing, but we can also build without glasses. But the example I show were because we need glasses to interact.
Let me correct my question.
It's not a question.
No, absolutely right, ma'am. You have responded it in that way. But ma'am, my query was that what happened when we are in India, if I'll make a building with such glass, so heat is there. So of course now there are solutions for different kind of glasses.
Glass is not a solution. The general solution in India, I think we wouldn't build that kind of thing. For sure. And the beautiful example of architecture we saw in India are not full glass, of course.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. You got your answer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So nice.
The gentleman at the back.
I'm Devan Sabani. I'm a student in Pune. To what extent can we cater to the individualistic needs of the people in a high-rise building, and how to tackle that approach?
Okay, you are saying in a context of heritage building, you would like to have spaces, open spaces, and to cater to large population.
Individualistic people, yes.
Yeah. And how do you allow for growth?
Yeah.
Not
how do we allow for growth? I mean, we saw the process, how do we allow for growth, but how do we cater to the individual needs of a person in an apartment building?
Individual needs.
It's not a heritage building, right?
It's old buildings.
Residential
old
buildings.
buildings. Old buildings.
Like a commercial campus or a residential building per se.
Right.
You, please.
Okay. I think actually that's also related to the research we did, because I truly believe that between the bare fact of the city, that what we see, we perceive, and the design scheme we conceived, we need to inject a process of first to observe the city, how it runs, what I call the knowledge production. And then you need to make a new prototype that has to be more optimized with the previous one from the knowledge you produced. And then based on that, you do your design. So to answer your question, we did a lot of research in like village in the city and this kind of tube apartment buildings in Beijing and other cities in China, that the privacy issue is actually, it's not a binary issue. It's not that whether space should be private for some individual, or it should be public. Rather, it's actually a question with a full spectrum. It's a gradient. On the one polar, it's fully private. On the other polar, it's fully public. You know, like you see in, for example, in the Mies van der Rohe's New Berlin Museum, which is an open ground with all public possibilities. But in the middle, there's many grades. You know, there could be 5 or 6 or more that are not purely private and neither purely private. And the thing is, you have to find all these different moments. For example, in the building we propose, there's this neighborhood sort of gathering living room that is for 2 rooms to share. And that's what we learned from the Hutong. And people don't go public directly from one person to a whole community. You first speak with your neighbors. And then in one floor of the building, you have a gather room, actually for different programs, for meeting and for chatting and for playing, different program. But then people gather in, for example, 6 to 10 kind of group, smaller group. They need this kind of, it starts to become, you can't say it's private or public. Then you have more public, in the atrium that people all see each other. And also not only other people can see the activity in the atrium, that you can also see across the atrium, see what other people are doing. So there's all this different degree of, from individual to a group of people collectively. So once you have construct that sort of, again, that model, but that's knowledge model in your mind, then you can deliver a design that responds to that in a more valuable and effective way, rather than in the end of the design, the building you bring, it's not followed the pattern people actually using it.
Yeah, I think what I've mentioned time and time again is the context. In other words, to do a design, he really spent a lot of time understanding the context, So therefore, that you are then able to interpret the program and then to create the space that you have. Yeah. So I was told by the sponsors I have only one last question. Yeah, gentlemen. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Manoj Datta. I'm a chartered architect teaching at Kerala as a professor of architecture after working for about 35 years in different parts of Africa. It is basically an observation related to the happiness, the main theme. What we are generally concerned, whether it's a high-rise or urban development, with 2 E's. One is environmental sustainability, the other is the economical sustainability. But I think we are missing the social sustainability. And I've just attended one session, I have not seen anything to that effect. So what about the social sustainability, whether it's a high-rise or urban development or any kind of development? A good example, I think a part of it was mentioned during the French deliberation. That is why in 1970, the 4th king of Bhutan has coined the word GNH, gross national happiness. And they are doing it very well. I'm just mentioning that as a comment to the entire, because I'm touching the broader issue of happiness, which is the main theme of it. And on the passing, I was in Dubai a few months ago. Dubai has a ministry and a minister of happiness to measure happiness level. I think that may be a way to achieve social sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Yours is a comment. Can we have a question? Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. I think you have summed it very well. We are looking at happiness, but again, like yesterday, was it the speech, your minister, as well as this morning's keynote, happiness can be in many forms. It's relative to people. So on that note, I'd like to ask you, you have a last question for us?
Thank you. I think we all understand cities are not uniform. They constitute dualities and contradiction. And I think in most of the cases, cities are melting now. And there are two worst things which are finding in the cities. They are travel, traffic, and the energy, What I would like to, we are now talking about the compact city. That future is now that we must have a compact city where we try to eliminate the travel. But how you see the role of the tall buildings in defining the future typology of cities, We'd like to understand the role and importance of tall buildings, how they can, minimize the contradiction, the dualities, and the problems, which are now being faced by cities across the globe.
You would like to answer that? I think what he's saying is that the key issue for most urban development is congestion, right? One of the key problems will be traffic congestion. So someone once said, if you have a high-rise building, it's almost you have a vertical city. You don't need to travel, leave work and play in a very high-rise, 1 mile long development, all right? But I think he's asking your opinion. How do you create a city without all that problem of traffic congestion? What else are you saying?
I was asking what is the role of
Tall building.
in defining the future
Yes.
model of city planning and development.
Okay. How does a tall building define the future of cities?
We should ask for the people, for the guy who
Yeah, the
who
first
came out.
speaker, he's not here.
Because
So,
In fact, what I'm trying to be contextual, in the sense, country like India, they have 2.4% of the total land of the globe, and they are having 16.7% of the population. It's unlike America, where, they have 3 times more than the land of India, 96 lakh square kilometers, and they have 1/4 of the population. In Indian context, I think the urban development is now an issue which we have to look at, in the context of land, in the context of development, It's not that you are looking at urban development. Ultimately, you are looking at feeding the people, which is more important. And here are, going to be 1.6 billion people by 2050. How they are going to be fed, how they are going to be, made to live like an index of happiness, which is being defined. I think those complexity and dualities, how we define the future context of this development.
Well, maybe not a
You have,
direct...
you have a China, have a same problem.
Yeah, well, maybe not a direct answer, because just following that, actually, what I was saying in the Wuhan landmark forum, actually, Wuhan is the city that has the most high-rise building in plan to be built in the next 5 years. They have actually 20 high-rises, like actually currently planned to be built, that is more than 300 meters. But one of the comments that I would have is, we have to look at what the high-rise are actually response to. I think the current high-rise building model are not much more than the first idea of an elevator. Actually, the whole model is based on a vertical shaft elevator, the core. So we're so confined in the so-called high-rise building by this elevator shaft, core, and shell kind of typology. And if you look at all the high-rise buildings, they're not that much different. It's only different kind of curtain wall, different shape, and maybe it kind of twist a little bit and connect 1 or 2 times between the towers. But that's it. So, but there's vast possibilities architects can do, is to see if there's vertical, if we have to go vertical, if let's say in 100 years we have to go vertical eventually to be more compact and say save the energy of traveling by car on the surface, but what are the different typology and prototype you can bring up? Maybe there can be, there can be steps that connects, like a step elevator or angled elevator, whatever you can bring up. That's also what I have been trying to do in the Singapore project. of the interlace, that it doesn't have to be a vertical shaft tower. There's many different ways, but we have to try. That's what, that's part of what we do.
I would like maybe to say that Paris is one of the more dense city in the world, and we had not a tower. We have one in the center, which is Montparnasse Tower, and it's so ugly that nobody wanted more towers. So now Herzog et de Meuron are trying to make a tower, but it's just near the périphérique. But Paris is a city, I would say, without towers, and it's one of the more dense. But it's also a question for climate, because in Paris we have a very continuous way to build, because it's Haussmann rules, where buildings are near. There are six stories. And then, for example, the wind is not fluently. Here in India you have other kinds, sure, of typology that are more adapted. So everyone should, I think climate is very important in the way you, but there is not a universal solution for density. I personally like to see some towers when I go, for example, to London, and when you see the landmark. But London, for example, has a lot of different kinds of buildings. There are also little houses, very beautiful. There are complexity of things. You go to New York also. As an architect, I would like very much to build a tower, because it's a sort of symbolic building that any architect, I suppose, would like to once in his life do. But this is not a unique solution for density.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I think this will always be an ongoing dialogue. There will always be ongoing, like you said, a discussion. So I believe in IAA will probably do more. So I think the gentlemen, keep your questions going to your own chapters. And I think as an architect, we always must find different solutions, because a different climate, different culture, different tradition. So on that note, I'd like to thank once again for being here and stay to the discussion. At this moment, I'd like to pass the mic to Indian Association. Yeah.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, audience, for your warm participation.